Yo.
Hey,
Hello.
good evening.
Hey.
Eddie.
How you doing?
How's it
Yo.
going, mate?
It's me.
How you doing?
Old heads in there as well.
I'm here too.
Yes.
Oh, great to see you guys. Great to hear you. Can't believe I'm actually online with you guys.
Hell yeah.
Best. It's just the best. Like,
A dream come true.
yeah. Cranked and ranked.
Indeed. You've got some records behind you there, haven't you?
So let's just tell everyone what we're going to do here.
Yeah.
The people out there in the wide, wide world talking about the 44 days in 1991, all the famous releases of alternative music. Alternative because it wasn't the mainstream, isn't that right? But it kind of it kind of became the mainstream, didn't it? Half of it.
Well, one album that came out was mainstream, but I mean,
Yep.
yeah. It all got to the mainstream, didn't it? Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
we were looking at the Black Album worldwide sales of, what was it, 48.5 million worldwide sales of the Black Album. And then we looked at Soundgarden's collective sales for their back catalogue, and I think it was 14 million. So obviously it's still mightily impressive, but
yeah.
Some things went supernova, and some things were just still very cool.
Yeah. 100%. So yeah, tell us about the records, man. What records are we talking about today?
We're talking about the Black Album by Metallica. Talking about Pearl Jam. Ooh, just hit the mic stand. We're talking about Pearl Jam's 10. Talking about Badmotorfinger, Soundgarden. Both the Illusion albums. Nevermind, obviously, Nirvana. All within 44 days. Although Hobo has got a kind of problem with the release date of Badmotorfinger. We're not sure if it did come out on September the 24th with the rest of, well, it was the last, wasn't it? Chili Pepper, Soundgarden, Nirvana are all on September the 24th. But was it pushed back? We're not sure.
I think Badmotorfinger, that was, the release dates were weird, and I guess they still kind of are, because I think they came out at different times in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if I remember right, the American release of Badmotorfinger was in October.
Yeah, October the 8th, I read, yeah.
And so I don't know if that was different in other parts of the world, but it's still, I mean, is that may not equal 44 days, but it's still pretty incredible that within,
I think it makes it about 53 days or something.
but really, in less than 3 months, we got 5 iconic albums. And I'm assuming we're all our angle at all of this is that these are all great albums, right? There's not
completely.
I mean, that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And as Hobo said on the way over in the car, there isn't one bad track on any of them, really.
No, I don't think so.
People would argue about Use Your Illusion, I think, but you know.
Yeah. Step out of my world.
We got a farty mic on Eddie's side.
But that actually did sound like my world because of the funny mic.
That was actually really great
to me.
I thought he planned that for a second. Can you just say you want to step into my world again now?
You want to step out of my world.
That's it. And that's how he did it. That's how Axel did it.
His mic was fucking up, and he's like, let's make that into a song.
Left myself to death.
No.
But you guys had your live stream the other day, didn't you?
We did.
Your 100th episode of Cranked and Ranked.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, because 100 times that we got together and did shit together. And so I thought it was worth celebrating in some way. And because honestly, like, it was weird. Like, the getting Cranked and Ranked together took several months of us just talking about it and planning it out. And even then I'm like, this will be cool probably for a few shows, and then he'll probably get bored of me. And then, then we won't do anything anymore. But it's gone on for two plus years, and over 100 episodes now. So
actually, I did want to ask you guys: was it because you saw each other's YouTube channel that's how you got together and decided to do Cranked and Ranked? Is that what happened?
Yeah. So if I remember right, Eddie contacted me and said, I do videos also, and your shit's great. And when I went over to his page, and like, there is a lot. I mean, you guys can see it up there. There's a lot of YouTubers, and a good majority of them are not very good. And like, I mean, they're doing their best, but sometimes it's either not very enjoyable or they're just not good on camera or whatever. Some would say I'm not great on camera either, but I kept running into those people like, oh, I'm follow my page too, and I would go look at it and go, this is just not anything I want to watch. But the complete opposite happened with Eddie, where I went to his page and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's like legit making great stuff. And so, it kind of went from there. And then I think it was like maybe a couple months later that he emailed me with the idea of doing a joint podcast, and just kind of went from there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because Eddie, I've checked out your one, and you do stuff on the green screen, don't you? You have stuff all going on behind you,
and now we start. No,
Cool.
Good evening. Now we can hear Eddie Sparks. How you should really sound.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's good that you guys got together and then.
The Metallica albums, the number one. What was mine? Mine's always going to be Ride the Lightning, but I think
we both said Ride, didn't we? Yeah.
Well, I don't really remember because I don't remember what I did because I changed it up because like there's my personal favorite, which is Ride the Lightning. But sometimes when we do the Cranked and Ranks, if it's something that like I've talked about a lot, I'll try to like look at it more subjectively or objectively, whichever one of those words is the right one. And so I probably put like Master of Puppets at number one or something, but I don't remember how I was looking at it at that point.
Yeah. It's a tricky question, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot to pull there from that discography,
Well, mine is the
And
Black Album, and I don't mind saying it. Okay,
if
I've lost a bit of respect with YouTube, I'm going to say it.
It's Master of Puppets all the way.
No, the Black Album.
The Black Album is probably my number 2 favorite Metallica album, but it's like all these albums that we're talking about. I don't know how old you two guys are, but like when all these albums were coming out, I was like 13, and I was just going into the 8th grade over here, and it was a really big deal because that was around the time that I was really getting into music, and so the fact that all this great shit was coming out was like a big deal, and these are all favorite albums of mine.
Yeah, same as me. It just reminds me every one of the albums on the list like just takes me back to like my last year or so at school. It's just crazy. Like every time I listen to any of them, everything just comes flooding back.
I worked it out, and I was 15 years and 2 months old when the Black Album was released.
Yeah,
and like we got treated to some of the best albums ever, and you know, has it ever been as good? Really, I mean, there has been masterpieces since, but not to that degree and that that amount of albums in, like you're saying, 44 days.
Yeah,
you know, when's that going to happen again? Has it?
Yeah,
no, it hasn't.
It really set us up for a lifetime of failures because it really made me feel like, oh, this is what it's going to be like for the rest of my life. Really amazing albums just come out every year.
Yeah,
and and good ones do come out, but nothing like that. Nothing that's like
Well, they did it in 92. It kind of happened again, not in 44 days, but there was amazing albums in 92. And I did think, like you say, it was just going to carry on like this fucking forever. But it didn't.
I've long maintained that the early 90s are just the peak of everything that I like. So like all the thrash bands were, transition.
Eddie, you've gone into goblin mode. Sorry, brother.
This sounds like a normal one, though. Let's just wait a minute. This one sounds like one of those normal ones.
I've switched off goblin mode, so
he's got 2 modes, well 3. He's got normal, my world, and goblin. So
I also have vibrate. That one's popular with the ladies.
So setting the scene for 1991, you had if anyone cares that's listening, you had George Bush in as president. We had John Major, otherwise known as the Grey One. And in 91, notable, we got loads of uninteresting facts about it. Notable movies in 91: Terminator 2, Boys in the Hood, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So we're in that zone.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, obviously one of the best films ever, in my opinion.
Hell yeah.
And related to one of the albums we're talking to.
And I do have the You Could Be Mine, Use Your Illusion picture disc.
Oh, I want one of those.
With Arnold Schwarzenegger on it, which I bought at the time, still got it. Should have got that. I should have flip that up on the video there if we ever do use the video. But
I didn't bring any of my stuff, so it's like, but
I've seen some doing vinyl.
Yeah.
So that's you know, kind of cool, but they're usually, you know, top seller albums. You won't find anything obscure in Asda.
Oh, I did. I saw Nirvana's Nevermind in Asda.
Yeah.
I took a photo of my son holding it because I thought it was quite funny.
Nice.
But yeah.
I've always, you know, I know that it's technically not one of the most legal things, but I've always bought CDs, but then I rip them to my phone. So like, yeah, I'm confessing my sins of over a decade of buying CDs and putting them on my phone. But
I think that's all right.
well, that's what I did. That's why I sold
You bought
sold my entire CD collection because of that. Well, I mean, I have some CDs, but they're just ones that you can't really get any other way, or they're special ones. But all my other shit, I just ended up selling it because I'm like, well, I don't even look at these.
yeah,
And that's probably why, and that's a big reason why I got so into vinyl several years ago, because I was like, oh, these are things that I buy and I actually want to pull them out and I actually want to look at them and I actually want to go through the whole experience of playing them. But with CDs, like it's so weird that it's lost the charm that it once had. Because in 1991, 92, like that was the best shit. Like, oh my God, I have CDs now.
Yeah.
Like forget every other medium ever made. This is the best shit right here.
Oh, it really was, wasn't it?
yeah.
I still love them.
No, so if we talk about, if we go from the start, August the 12th, 1991, Metallica Black Album was released. That was the start of the 44 days. If I know you guys, I know your favorite band is Metallica, both of you, isn't it?
yeah.
So let's just say the first time you heard the Black Album, let's talk about that, Head, if you can remember that. And just how you felt at the time and what you thought of it. I mean, you was already a Metallica fan. You already had the other albums. I'll admit I didn't have the other albums.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
So no, the way that I came on board with them was that I saw the video for one. And honestly, like as a young kid, I was like, well, this is kind of scary. I don't know if I'm ready for this yet. And then it was the music videos for the Black Album. Like once the Enter Sandman video came out, I was like, oh, this is fucking cool. And I didn't buy the album when it first came out because I knew them, but I didn't know them that well. I had friends that were into Metallica and they all seemed like they were all the cool kids. And so I knew like, oh, one day I got to get into this because all these people with great musical taste all like Metallica. Makes sense. But it was several months later when I finally bought the Black Album. The first thing I bought was the single, a cassette single.
Right.
With it was Enter Sandman. I feel like it was Stone Cold Crazy on the other side of the cassette single.
Nice.
And then played the fuck out of that. And so, you know, a few months later, I got the Black Album, and I was like, it's weird because that's probably the best example of me becoming kind of an instant fanatic over a band, because once I heard that album, it was one that I wanted to just listen to over and over again. And then little by little, every time I got the chance to go, because around that time in where I lived in Austin, Texas, they started to spring up these used CD stores. And every time I would go to the used CD store, I would try to find another Metallica album. And so it became my thing where I went back and got completely obsessed over everything they did. And I feel like I'm glad that I heard them when I did, because I think part of that is why I'm so open to them doing different things. Like I appreciate Lulu. I actually really enjoy things about that. And I enjoy Saint Anger and things like that. But it's because if you go listen to Kill 'Em All and the Black Album and then put Master of Puppets in the middle of that, you're like, well, shit, these guys kind of just do whatever they feel, and it comes out really fucking great.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel like it was the right time for me, because I'm like, yeah, I discovered all of that together. I got to experience, instead of being a guy that's like, oh man, I wish they would do another Kill 'Em All. I didn't like this Fade to Black shit or whatever. I was a guy that came in on board with this fully formed band that had done these 5 albums. And so I was quickly obsessed, and have been obsessed pretty much ever since. So,
and I feel like there's a scale of which you can like measure like how much someone is obsessed with a band, quote unquote, selling out by which point they gave up on Metallica. So like you have the people that gave up on Load and Reload because it wasn't metal anymore, and then you have the people that thought the Black Album was too commercial. Then you've got and Justice for All. They were like, they made a video. And then you've got the people that were pissed off about Fade to Black, and it's just this kind of like scale, and you eventually end up with the people that only like Kill 'Em All.
which is why, like, I really hope that when Metallica puts out another album, it's something that's just going to piss people off. Like, it would make me so happy for them to put out something that's just going to fuck with everybody, because then all the real fans can continue on with our lives. Everyone else can just go do something else.
It's always going to piss someone off, though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess so.
There's always people who ain't happy. There's always, you know, they could release another Kill 'Em All, and there'll be like a load of fans will be like, no, you got to still be doing stuff like St. Anger.
I really like Death Magnetic. I thought that was a true return to form, and the closest thing to the Black Album that they've ever done, really, for me. Black Album, just fast forward to Death Magnetic, and then that, you know, that's that stuff in the middle.
I disagree. See, I disagree. I
know you disagree. And
I love
Load
and Reload are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. Southern rock, stroke metal albums or whatever. And you know, I mean, there's so many influences there. You know, I know they were touring with Corrosion at the time and all this kind of stuff, and they took a lot of influence from that. But to me, that just makes it even better.
I found. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I cut you off. I've always found like mid-90s albums tends to be the era of like the grower album for me. Like any albums released in the mid-90s, I've grown to like more over time, as opposed to stuff from the early 90s where it's like instant love right out of the gate. But
yeah,
I've found that, you know, Load and Reload have actually aged pretty gracefully. You know.
Yeah. For me too.
Stuff on it, yeah.
And I've said many times that Metallica is my favorite band because they did Load, Reload, Saint Anger, Lulu, all of these things. Tried to make a fucking movie and it didn't do well for them. All of those things are reasons why I love that band. If they were just a band that was like Exodus that kept on putting out kind of the same album over and over again all the time, I would have lost interest, and I would just been like, yeah, they're fine, but I'm not really interested anymore.
Yeah.
I do like St. Anger. We do put it on, don't we?
Yeah,
especially the tracks St. Anger.
Lulu.
Even the tracks on St. Anger that I didn't like as much years ago, those have become ones that all have some part of it that I go, this is fucking great. And so, you know, so now I'm like the vocal champion of that album. I'm just like, anytime I can talk about how great it is, I'm going to do it because there's too many people hating on it.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. Gets a bad reputation.
We were reading some Black Album facts, and we read that I think it was Lars, Jason, and James Kirk.
They're all going through
a divorce at the time of the whole recording of the Black Album. I didn't know that until we was like looking deeper into it. But imagine that, just being in the studio day after day, and they've got all that going on, but they just completely had to shelve that to get the album done.
Yeah. I think about the ex-wives who could have divorced them a year later.
With 48 million copies under their belt.
But they're kicking themselves, man.
Yeah, and now 20 or 30 years later, James is getting another divorce.
He is. Oh dear.
And the Unforgiven and the God That Failed is about James Hetfield growing up in a religious home, isn't it? I think that's what those tracks are about. So it's deeply personal stuff on the Black Album.
Yeah, well, I mean, on Injustice for All, you had Dyer's Eve, which was all about his parents and his relationship with them and their faith and stuff. So he would sneak in personal stuff. He's just really good at kind of masking it. Well, on some albums, he's really good at masking it under other things, and you don't really know what he's talking about. And then you want to bring it up again, Saint Anger, where it's literally just all out on the table. But
I don't know how long we could go on about each album, so we might have to move on.
No worries.
Yeah, I actually got to, at 9 o'clock your time, I got to get out of here to go pick up my daughter. So we got an hour.
Yeah, I think we can do it. We can do it, can't we?
Well, let's
So
move on then.
Pearl Jam's 10 was the next one, August the 27th, 1991.
Yeah.
Like you always say, Head, because I obviously listen to Cranked and Ranked. It's a rock album. They're a rock and roll band.
Yeah,
it's not grunge, and that is why it's the test of time, isn't it? Probably, and the wider appeal of Pearl Jam. I mean, when you put it on, it is just a masterpiece, isn't it? Of rock and roll. You know, from start to finish. Even the ballad stuff is just sensational.
And it's just a constant loop, isn't it? You know, it finishes the way it starts, isn't it?
I love that.
You can just hit play again. It just continues and continues, which was genius at the time. You know, I mean, there's been bands that have done that since. I think the last one I can think of is probably the last Ghost album. It kind of looped. It finishes on the riff where it began in the beginning. I'm getting confused, but yeah, I think it's quite a clever way of.
You want to step into his world?
You really.
It's a constant loop.
But no, I think that was just like one of the kind of the genius kind of elements of that album, you know.
Yeah, I've always thought 10 sounded like sonically it just sounds otherworldly. Like it doesn't sound like any other album they did. It's just so wet and it's got so much reverb on it, and I've always found myself drawn to this album in particular just because of how like I can't think of any other album that sounds like it. Maybe Core by Stone Temple Pilots, but like, and I'll also say, I love Stone Temple Pilots. I think they were doing their own thing anyway. It just so happened to be the early 90s when
I never really got the comparisons. You know, I don't think they were. Apart from like, you know, Waylon's voice was a bit similar, but everyone sung like that in the 90s anyway, didn't they? So. There you go.
Yeah, I think with them, it didn't help them that their first album came out the same day as Alice in Chains' Dirt.
Yeah.
And then some of the music on Core sounded kind of like Dirt, and both the album covers looked so similar. So everyone was just like, what is going on here? So it really was just kind of like, hey, kids, we're grunge too. Come listen to us. But very quickly, we all
got someone buried in the desert on their album cover. Come on.
Yeah.
We fried an apple tree or something.
We figured out eventually that it was good shit, but at first, but even with Pearl Jam, if I remember correctly, I didn't get into Pearl Jam at first. It was after Nirvana, so it was once Nevermind came out, which we'll get to that one. I started, I guess, to turn my ear towards this like alternative rock that seemed like at the time, like if I remember right, it was referred to as college rock over here.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to a lot of that stuff. So your Jane's Addictions and bands like that. The only one that he was even similar that I listened to already was Chili Peppers, and we'll get to them too. But so Pearl Jam was a thing that was like, oh, I'm into this sound. Let's move into this. And then I got Pearl Jam. It almost seems like all of these albums, I got all of them within like the same month, probably.
Yeah.
Just because of like. Because at that point, you know, I was a kid that just watched MTV any chance that I got, and you saw all of these music videos. And so if there was one album that you went, this is not really connecting with me yet, as soon as you hear Even Flow for the 12th time, you're like, no, this shit's good. And so
as soon as I saw the video where he's climbing along, climbing up on the rigging, is it Even Flow, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's Alive.
Okay. Okay, so that
video... maybe it is Even Flow. Either way, they're just like they're filmed at the same fucking show.
Yeah. Well, we don't watch music videos anymore, so I can't fucking remember. But
I do all the time.
Whatever that one is, where he's climbing on the rigging at the top, I was like, I'm getting an album, and I went and got that album. It was we have spoke about this before. There's an infamous gig. Pearl Jam actually came over to where we live in Southend in Essex, and played this venue called the Esplanade. On their little UK tour back in when it was just before it was released. So they played over here, and all the locals.
All they had released was a single.
Yeah, all the locals and that went down to check them out, and it's like the venue's not even there now. It's like it's been made into flats, but
you'd probably get 100 people in there if you were lucky.
Everyone from around, we've said this before, everyone around this area says that they were there at the gig. Yeah. I'll admit I wasn't at the gig, even though I used to go 2 gigs down there. I was not at the gig. But yeah, it's like the stuff of legend. There's no photos of them, because you didn't take cameras into gigs in 1991.
There
you
was-
weren't allowed, was
yeah.
it? It was like, oh,
We used to have a
you'd
magazine
have to have
here.
it down your pants.
We used to have a magazine here called Kerrang, and every I'm sure you remember that, Eddie, the Kerrang magazine. But they used to do they'd do like a classic gig, and they'd write about the gig, and they'd do like a photo of the set list. They did put that Pearl Jam gig in that. I remember buying that episode and that edition of the magazine. But that's the only time I've ever seen it mentioned. But like Perk said, like I know a billion people in Southend who would swear they were at that gig, and I know that venue is not big enough to hold that many people.
All the guys from all the hardcore bands around here say they were at the gig. You know, we believe them, don't we?
No.
Another thing I wanted to mention is we actually interviewed. We talked to Dave Cruzen, the original drummer, the drummer of 10. He's in a band called Sons of Silver from the LA Strip, and it's the ex-Candlebox bass players in the band as well. It's one of our episodes. Go back and listen to it if you get time. But he was really cool, and he said at the time of when he recorded 10, they were recording Mother Love Bone as well. So the other guys were recording that.
Whoa.
And it was like in and out of the studio is what he was saying, wasn't it?
No. It was Temple of the Dog.
Temple of the Dog, not Mother Love Bone.
So they were all recording in the same studio.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
They were all like walking between each other's rooms, and
then he recorded 10, and he also said there's like extra tracks that were recorded then, and they've never been released. Yeah, that's what he said.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because you think when these like 20-year anniversary editions come out of all these extra tracks, you think like, God, they've really like scraped the bottom of the barrel there and stuff, and and it's all amazing stuff, and it's it sort of takes them back to that time, but there's still stuff that's sitting in vaults somewhere that's never come out.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Maybe Dave doesn't know that they've lost them.
Yeah. So all the, you have to remember all these albums we're talking about. This young gentleman was not even born.
No, but he loves them as much as we all do, right?
Yeah, you can tell that. I mean, the passion he's got for back catalogs is unbelievable.
Yeah. Eddie, tell us the first time you listened, the first time you heard 10. Can you remember?
Oh, I must have been about 12.
Yeah.
It just so happened that I was talking to my uncle. His big influence on me as a musician, and he's into all the same stuff I'm into. He's your age, so he was around for the first time around. But I remember asking him, I said, I was under the impression that because he had the Live Ship Binge and Purge box set, he was like, well, if he got that, Metallica's his favorite band.
Yeah.
But I asked him, and he actually turned around and said, actually, there's this band called Pearl Jam. Check this out. And I think Black was the first song I heard. But it was one of those times where, I was into really heavy stuff. But to hear a song that good is just undeniable. Like I heard Black and I immediately thought, this is insane. And then I went and heard the rest of the album, and it's all that level of quality. And I'm like, I must have this. And then about 2 years later, I turned 14 and then just did a massive grunge deep dive. But 10 was there from the beginning.
So so literally we're talking about a time. So if you're 12, that's 2010, 2011.
2010. Yeah.
And so it's literally already in a time where you can just go online and find whatever album you want. Which I don't know if that's better or worse, because I like the idea of being able to find whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
But I start thinking, like, would I like all the same music I like now if I didn't have to save my money to buy one CD and then listen to that one CD over and over again for weeks or whatever?
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I was always wary of downloading stuff because I never ever downloaded anything illegally.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I didn't know how, so I just
Lars, if you're listening, no.
Yeah, I'm innocent. Yeah, but I just remember someone told me that they'd spent like 10 quid on an album, and I was like, oh, okay, let's see it. They were like, oh, it's just a download on my phone. And it's like, well, if you spend £10, I at least want something I can hold on to.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to go out and buy it. So pretty much every album on my phone, barring the stuff that's on Spotify because it's like too expensive on CD, like to get now. Say like you find like a Grun Truck album and it's like 200 quid. I'm like, okay, I can't really justify that purchase, but like, you know, if I can go out and buy 10 for 10 quid conveniently, you know, I just went out and I supported the artist. I always had that kind of mindset where I was like, I get something, they get something.
Yeah.
Notable tracks on there. Jeremy, amazing track. We've just sort of written down what you know, briefly. That was about gun violence in school, and apparently Eddie Vedder, someone in his school shot up his school, or there was someone with a gun in his school, and it really hit home, and it reminded him.
I think the story was I think he killed himself at school.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. It was based on, I believe it was based on 2 school shootings. One where a child went into school and opened fire and killed the teacher and a couple of other kids or whatever. And one was his own experience, which was a kid came into school and killed himself. So, yeah. Terrible.
I mean, I like, you know, that was 1991. And I think it was yesterday, some idiot in Thailand come and killed 36 kids in the school. So
that was today.
Yeah.
Was that today?
Yeah.
Shocking.
So what's changed? Fucking nothing.
Not just the frequency of the events. They're more often now.
Yeah. I mean, you think about every track on that album, and you know,
we got Even Flow was about a homeless Vietnam vet struggling with mental illness. Thing is, we've researched this again. We knew all this stuff when it came out, you know, read in magazines at the time, but you have to remind yourself, don't you? Because it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have to pinch myself head when I think that.
Yeah.
The 44 days in 91 was 30 years ago. And I know there's no podcast on it, which I thought would be such a good idea to do it. It's more of a tribute episode, isn't it? Alive. Eddie's lyrics about his experience thinking his stepfather was his real father when he wasn't, or maybe there was inspiration for that. Maybe there was a bit of fiction, not sure, but that's what we can gather from that one.
Yeah,
but the lyrics are quite clear, aren't they, in Jeremy and Alive?
Yeah,
you know, it's
like
the story is told so well and so straightforward, isn't it? You get that gist. Well, I did when I heard it.
Yeah.
The first time.
He didn't really mince his words, or he doesn't really mince his words, does he? You know, he's sort of, it's all there. Yeah.
We better move on from Pearl Jam.
All right.
Let's go, because we're on a time here. We can't make this a 24-hour podcast.
Well, the next one obviously was a double, and it was.
Wait, did we already skip
everything to me?
Did we
everything?
Did we skip Nevermind?
No,
Nevermind.
Last, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the last one.
Well, it's last on the list.
Oh, because it was I thought we were going in order because that was in August also, I think.
Oh, was it?
Well,
maybe it was September.
We got it down as September the 24th. Nevermind, and
you're right.
And Badmotorfinger and Blood Sugar is all on September 24th. So it was Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
Yes,
was next.
Yes.
Go Hobo.
I don't even know what to say about it. You know, I mean, I know you guys have you know, you've done a podcast where you've sort of wrestled it down to one album, which I thought was a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
And we sat down a couple of weeks ago and we tried to do the same thing
because of you.
And dear God, it was hard. It was so hard to sort of cut songs out,
especially when Eddie left that Double Talking Jive. I mean,
I could never leave that.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the?
The thing is, though, it's like you're working with like nearly 30 songs. And it's oh man.
Yeah. That one was a big deal because I think out of all of these bands, well, no, I was already really into Chili Peppers and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
So this was like a really anticipated album. But once again, it was that thing where I could only afford to buy one.
Yeah.
So when they came out, I bought Use Your Illusion 1.
Yeah.
Because which is weird because like the one that sold more copies was number two.
It was two, yeah.
And in my brain, I'm like, how could you buy that one first? You gotta start with number one.
But it was obviously because of You Could Be Mine. Right?
I bought number two because of You Could Be Mine video. I fell in love with that video.
I think that's why most people bought it, and people were buying it just because they wanted that song from that film. Yeah. I'm assuming that's why it sold more.
I love that bit in the video where he like looks at Axel and it does the like assessment, waste of ammo.
They look
at each other, don't they? And then they just both walk off, and it's just like so good.
Yeah,
it's so good, isn't it?
Oh,
absolutely.
But those albums, Christ! I mean, there's a version you can buy. You could buy in the UK. I don't even know if you still can, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. But the cover is like split in half, and you've got like the orange and the blue, and that has been knocked down to like one CD's worth. But I've never looked at the track listing. But I'm gonna have a look.
I've never seen that.
It'd be interesting to see what they took out. Yeah. You know. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, no, that was when that came out, especially the first album. There, when it came out, there was no skipping any of those tracks. Like it was like every single song to me was amazing on that album.
Yeah.
I mean, especially like that's the thing is that it's my favorite out of the two, but mostly because of the strength of like. Just fucking Coma on its own. The song Coma is unlike anything that Guns N' Roses did before or since.
Yeah.
And it's just insane the songwriting of that song.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to the whole last couple of minutes of the song, it keeps changing keys over and over again, not going back to the same thing it was playing before. And Axl is still singing something over each part. And I'm just like, how long did that fucking take to throw together? Like that's insane. But
it's also the longest song they've ever recorded. So but what a song! But when you listen to it, it doesn't feel long, does it? It's just like
not
it's
at
just
all.
genius. It's absolute genius.
So that sold 35 million copies worldwide.
Yeah,
not as much as the Black Album, which I always kind of believed that the Illusion sold more, but didn't.
Well,
go for it.
Well, there was a weird thing that happened, especially over in America, where here was the trajectory. So Guns N' Roses was connected to the 80s hair metal scene.
Yeah.
Metallica was not. So once Nirvana and everybody came in this way, it's like Guns N' Roses kind of got tipped off at the side. And then for some reason, Metallica just got carried along with the grunge stuff. It was okay to be into the heavy metal stuff.
Yeah.
But if there was
the
any
hair metal thing was a bit different, wasn't it?
If there was any trace to like the 80s hard rock scene, then that stuff started selling less and less and less and less records like real quick, which is pretty weird.
But let me ask you this, Head. If the Illusions was one album, like you guys turned it into, and it went toe to toe with the Black Album throughout history, what would have sold more?
Probably the Black Album.
Yeah, Black Album.
Yeah,
because if you think about it, if you listen like going in over here in like department stores or just listening on some random radio station, out of all of the songs on both of those albums, the only song you ever hear is November Rain. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Black Album, you hear all of those singles still. Maybe not Wherever I May Roam, but I think I hear every other single from that album on regular rotation, just randomly out and about. And so I think the strength of those songs, it would have ended up.
Rome is my fucking favorite.
You're a lucky man because you have rock radio out in the US.
Kind of.
We don't even have that. We don't even have. We have a couple of channels, but if you've listened to Planet, I've spoken about this to Matt Stocks, but when you get Planet Rock, but that's just real classic rock. They hardly ever tip into anything other. And they've got the new wave of British rock, a few songs, but you don't get Metallica on it and stuff like that. You get K-Rock, like the Vegas channel, K-Rock and stuff. When I used to go to Vegas, like that channel, you used to get a hire car and listen to that all the time, listen to it in your hotel room, whatever. K-Rock. We don't have that. We never had that. All your stuff, all these albums for you are like mainstream albums. Like, they're not over here. They're not.
Yeah, rock radio over here now is it's all pretty much just classic rock, but they've now included a little bit of the 80s and the 90s, just a little bit. So you'll hear Alice in Chains and Metallica and stuff like that, but it's still Boston and Jimi Hendrix and all of this stuff. Like it's still a majority 70s rock music. They just throw in a few from the 2 decades after, but that's where I live anyway. There's no, if there's like, plus now, every time somebody says, "Oh, it's a new rock band," and I'm all like, "This is literally another one of those bands where it's one guitar player and one drummer, and they're just playing some basic ass blues crap." Yeah, and that's that. I'm supposed to accept that as what rock and roll is now. I'm like, no, thanks.
Well, so the Illusions debuted at #1 in the US, and I think they reached, is it 6 or something over here? I remember seeing them on MTV. You know, MTV News, that Kurt Lauder guy. Like, you had all the people queuing around the block to get the Illusions at midnight on the 17th of September '91, and that was the excitement of that. I mean, it just made you couldn't wait to get out and get the album. You know? Yeah. What did you feel when you first heard the Illusions? Then, what song got you onto listening to the Illusions? If you can even remember that.
Damn. It was probably You Could Be Mine. Like that, tied in with Terminator 2, like match made in heaven.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Some of those tracks, though, I've got to admit, when I first used to listen to them, I did automatically think, this track's not good enough for the Illusions.
You fucking take that back.
No, I'm not taking it back. There is.
I agree. There are a couple that I wish were better, but only in comparison to what also is on the album. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
The thing is, though, following up Appetite is a task in itself. Yeah, like with anything, but. Yeah, it's another set of Grower albums for me. I hear new stuff every time I listen to them.
Yeah, there's so much there.
There's all those like noises Axl makes, and like those sort of those little over voices, and all that. It just comes in, you just like, and it's just stuff he says at the end of tracks, and you like, what?
That's the thing, is I really wish that I could watch studio footage, because I have to like. Just the idea that Axl Rose is in the vocal booth, and he's like, "Hold on a second, I'm going to do this thing on the end of this song. Hold on a second," and he goes, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And then and who knows if the rest of the band was like, "Why?" It's just like just go with it. Everyone's going to love it.
But the rest of the band weren't even there. He was doing it on his own,
probably.
I was just going to say that ties into kind of what I always think about when that bit in Jeremy from 10 is that part where he just starts going.
I love
that. That's the thing I do too. But it's one of those things where I wish I could have seen it happen in the studio.
He was having virtually a fit when he was doing that, wasn't he?
Yeah,
that's probably politically incorrect to even say that, isn't it?
No, you get away with that.
Two little things about the Illusions that I did want to mention. The Estranged video.
Oh,
right. It's just outrageous. The budget on it and stuff. Axl jumping off an old tanker.
Slashes floating down Sunset Strip, and
that before CGI. That he probably did jump off that old tanker. He probably had to like hire that fucking old tanker.
Weren't in.
Well, you got to remember, Terminator 2 used CGI, so it was around the same time that CGI was first starting out.
Yeah,
right. So had been a little bit. The main thing about that video I had to mention to you too is right at the end where Axl takes a loving little look over to the dolphin, and the dolphin starts going like talking back to him, and then kind of hug and embrace, and it's just like, it's so fucking cheesy. And I thought that then. I thought that when I was 17.
I didn't. I just thought he was a ghost.
What was he thinking? Putting that little bit of him and the dolphin at the end, and the dolphin goes, laughs at him. Like, if I can see it now, I mean, it's so funny.
Oh,
and
it's
his
been ages since I've watched it. But
his
now
trainer
I
falls
really
down
wanna
to the
watch it.
bottom.
You're gonna
doesn't it?
watch it now, and
His trainer falls to the bottom of the sea, and it's just got Axel written on the back of it.
Yeah.
I love all that. I love all that.
I've got these they did 3 different full-length VHSs, and each one is the making of each video.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, those are pretty fun to watch.
And the Live in Tokyo ones.
Those are great too. That's those are the videos that I always point out when somebody's like, "Well, why? Who gives a shit about Guns N' Roses?" I'm like, just watch them as a live band around 91, 92.
100%.
Yes.
Like there was no front man doing what Axl Rose did, and maybe Steven Tyler, but not the energy. There was just,
mate.
he was just a step above all that.
Yeah, and like all those live videos, like everything he said between every song is up here. It's still in my head. I can remember every word. Like when the Paris stuff where he was like slagging off Warren Beatty.
Yes,
I can remember every.
We still quote it now.
Every bit of it,
So listen, home, fuck.
Yeah. And he's like, I got hit in the dick with a bic, didn't he? He says something like that because a lighter hits him or something. And
this fucking
interpreter, please. All that shit. It's brilliant.
This parasitic man. Listen, we never used to watch the Tokyo videos, even though I had them. I thought that because I had this thing. I don't like I thought the crowd were really boring in those videos. And it was quite dark. And I found the Paris live gig.
The Paris one started during the day.
Yeah, I recorded it live. It was on like a special on Sky One. It was like Labatt's special, the whole Paris gig. Yeah, Lenny Kravitz comes out.
Yeah, that was awesome.
My Mama Says, is it?
No.
What's it?
Try again.
Always on the Run.
Always on the Run.
Yeah.
So the album is called Mama Said.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lenny Kravitz does that, and that's brilliant. He's absolutely on fire with Slash. And then Aerosmith come out at the end of that gig, and they do Train Kept a Rolling and that, didn't they?
Yeah.
And Mama Kin. Yeah. It's just outstanding. We've watched it a million times, and like he says, every single word is like a cult quote now.
Yeah.
Everything Axl said in between. Yeah. But I thought what I thought was really funny on your one is when was it you, Eddie, that said about the end of Getting the Ring where Duff does that? I've just been beaten up. Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
When I listen to that now, I've always really it's the same as the Dolphin. I just think, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've always really loved that because I would for one day love to like be in a rock band where you were just convinced that you were hot shit and you were a badass, because it must feel great because like when they made that song and when Duff does that part of the song, he walked away being like, nailed it.
Totally.
And the rest of the world were like,
no, they weren't. But they were cool, weren't they? And they were like the bad boys. They were going to like the MTV Awards and beating Kurt Cobain up and shit like that, weren't they? They were they were the hard men, weren't they?
Yeah, I remember Axl Rose said to Courtney Love and he said to Kurt Cobain, I don't remember it like I was there, but do you know what I mean? It was in the press.
I know the story. Yeah,
it was in the press. He said to Kurt Cobain, "Shut your bitch up, or I'm going to put her to the curb." Now, that's fucking rock and roll, isn't it? You know what I mean?
But then the second part of that story is that he says, "Tell your bitch to shut up," and then Kurt turns to her and says, "Shut up, bitch."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? It shows you we had a good sense of humor as well, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
Because we've sorry, Head.
No.
With us, it was like a lot of people around the time were like, "Oh, if you like Nirvana, you can't like Guns N' Roses. Axl's a cock," or "You can't like Metallica. That's just metal. If you like grunge." But fuck that. And I've always been the same. I've liked it all. I liked it all. I've never been one type. I've just like it all, and I don't care if you never cared if it was cool to like Nirvana and not GNR. I've just like no, like it all.
Well, I'll be the first to admit, all I listened to was Guns N' Roses until Nevermind came out, and then overnight I stopped listening to Guns N' Roses. That was the end of it. All I wanted was more Nirvana and more of the grunge thing.
Yeah, I got well into
I didn't listen to Guns N' Roses for a long time. I mean, they weren't releasing anything anyway, right? But
I never did again. I mean, they're talking about the Illusions. 14 years was sung by Izzy, wasn't it? That was kind of his part in parting track. He was left the band as they were released, wasn't they?
Yeah.
He left as they got released.
Yeah. He's never confirmed it, but a lot of people say that was written because he knew when he wrote that song, he'd known Axl Rose for 14 years. And a lot of people reckon that was about their relationship. I mean, how true that is, I don't know.
Interesting.
I suppose only Izzy knows, I suppose.
It's a good theory.
Yeah.
I missed out. The only band from this group that we're talking about that I've seen is Metallica, and that's mostly because back when I wanted to see them a lot, obviously I didn't get to see Nirvana because they were done before I was able to get to gigs a lot.
Yeah.
But the other ones, they just lost my interest. So I'm like, well, I couldn't get out to the gigs in the early 90s, but then later on in life, I'm like, I'm not really that bothered to pay all the money to go see them.
Yeah. It's different for you though, isn't it? If you want to, I was still in a bollock. For you though, it's like if you want to go to a gig, it could be a fucking 4-hour drive, couldn't it? Though, Head. For us, it's like London's 50 minutes on a train in a straight line.
Yeah. So I've gotten to the point now that I live in a big enough city. I mean, I live in one of the biggest cities in the country, and so if the tour doesn't come here, well, I'm like, well, no, fuck it, I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that makes sense.
So unfortunately, a deep love of the Illusions would have to move on to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, September the 24th, 1991. Blood, Sugar Sex Magik, the album. I mean, my friend got me into those. I think he got the Breaking the Girl CD single, played me that, and then all of a sudden everyone was getting the album.
That's a weird song to get into.
Yeah, I know. And we got I got the album. And it's brilliant. And I did revisit it when I started listening to the 7 albums again on shuffle these last couple of weeks, just to remind myself how good they are. Not that I need to remind him.
No.
But forgot, as I said in my tweet, how actually good Blood Sugar Sex Magik is, and the guitaring on it. I mean, we read that John is it Frusciante?
I don't know.
Anyway, so he all those guitar solos he did on this album were done in the first or second take, and that was it.
No fucking about it.
Laid down, done, and it's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even the start of Under the Bridge, that little riff and guitar bit, it's just legendary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is legendary. Yeah.
And they all stayed in. Rick Rubin produced it, and they all stayed in his mansion, didn't they, for 3 months recording it? I know one of them was scared it was haunted.
Chad Smith, because it was well known that his mansion was haunted or whatever. And they all stayed there. They all thrived on that, apart from Chad Smith, who refused to stay there.
Wow.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you guys feel about the album?
That was out of all these, that's the one that I bought, I think, the day it came out. Because I was already a really huge Chili Peppers fan.
Yeah.
And so I got this one, and at first I actually didn't really like it that much because of, I remember the first couple songs, I'm like, oh, these are pretty good. But then it got to Breaking the Girl, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, eventually they're just going to bust into something funky here, because why would they do a song like this?
Yeah.
And the song ended up just playing out as this song, which now I think is a brilliant song. Yeah. But at the time, it was probably my first taste of a band kind of throwing a curveball and me not being ready for it.
Yeah.
But that was definitely, it was a grower, because at first I was like, it's pretty good. But then, multiple listens in, I'm like, oh no, there's tons of bangers on this album. I'd have to say, though, out of all of these albums we're talking about, it's probably my least favorite of them.
Yeah. And I said that on the way here, but yeah, 100%. It still has a lot of memories for me. I can remember listening to it, like girls' bedrooms and all this kind of stuff, and having it on in the background, all that kind of stuff, like at that time.
The Under the Bridge video, I mean, I used to watch MTV all day, every day then. Yeah. And I saw that so many times when he's running down, under the bridge downtown. Like, it's just epic, isn't it? I mean, that just catapulted them into like widespread popularity, even though they had a solid back catalogue, which I never knew about at the time until I saw Under the Bridge, the video. And then my friend had the What Hits. It was like the compilation of
that was a great
all of their previous good stuff, and
Yeah.
a couple of things off Blood Sugar. I think Under the Bridge was on there. I'm not even sure, but
No,
that's
it
how
wasn't.
we got
No,
into their back catalogue
That was
through What
before Blood
Hits.
Sugar came out, wasn't it? What Hits, I think.
Yeah, so
What
we
Hits
had
was
that.
after.
Oh,
was
yeah.
it?
I thought it was after.
Yeah.
Right,
Then that got us into all the other stuff. Then my mate bought Mother's Milk, and that was like, oh yeah, all
that's
that,
the
all
album.
that really.
That's the album for me.
That is so
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Like
same.
when we got that, and we was like, oh yeah, all that funky. Oh, it's really funky and fast, isn't it? The Magic Johnson song and all that. It's like fucking well good.
And there's stuff on Mother's Milk that, you know, borders on funk metal, you know, let alone, you know, funk rock. So it's like, you know, good time boys, even Higher Ground, Nobody Weird Like Me. Like that was all like pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But like they were also, you know, good enough songwriters to translate to softer stuff that still comes off really, really good. And I think that is where this album is at its strongest. That like cohesion.
Yeah.
I read somewhere it was supposed to be a double album as well. But,
you can kind of tell, can't you?
by today's standards, it is pretty damn. You know, it's like when you think about albums that came out in the '80s, and then Blood Sugar Sex Magik, it's what, an hour long, or it's pretty long.
Yeah, it is a long album. It was like 17, 18 tracks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Correctly. But no, great album.
Give It Away. That was a big hit on MTV, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Give It Away.
Huge.
Yeah, I mean that song still holds up today as great, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like an old track. It still sounds great now, doesn't it?
I need to revisit it really. But I mean, I've always sort of preferred the Chili Peppers with Johnny. And I love his vocal harmonies. You know, I like his solo stuff as well. I'm quite a big fan of his. So, you know, great album. But out of this list, unfortunately, it's probably at the bottom for me.
I'll go with that. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know why.
Eddie, how do you feel? What is your bottom for this?
I'm gonna say the same because I do feel bad putting any of these at the bottom of anything, but I mean they're all great. That's the thing. But I'm gonna have to agree.
Okay, so we leave Blood Sugar, and
I mean something has to be at the bottom, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And it's like it's not like, oh, that's the greatest album ever and that's the worst album ever. They're all still right at the top, aren't they? Right?
Yeah.
We can agree on that.
There's not a bad track on the 44
Absolutely.
days and 91. Except for My World.
So,
and I would have cut Dust and Bones, by the way.
No,
I said it.
No way.
I said it.
Oh, here we go.
I said it. But Right Next Door to Hell, I bloody adore that track.
Right next door to hell.
See, love that. Love that.
Did you write a letter to me?
This goes to all the guns and fucking
Yeah.
Shit. So right, let's jump forward. Also on the 24th of September 1991 was Soundgarden's Badmotorfinger.
although it may have been the 8th of October, but let's not worry about that.
So this album, what are our notes on this? Kim Thale said it was the heavy metal equivalent of the White Album.
A bold statement.
Is that he say his name? Kim Thale?
Kim Thale? Yeah.
Thale. He said it was the heavy metal equivalent of the White Album.
I don't
think he still stands by that.
I don't get the connection.
The only connection that I read was that it's quite psychedelic in a lot of ways, and that was kind of why he said it.
Maybe. Yeah.
I find a lot of what grunge bands say about their music is off to any one thing, and you know, whenever I've seen like interviews with them, they're never like, this is the heaviest fucking thing we've ever done, because they're like, that's not what they're about, really. Even if they are heavy, they're always like, it's more than that. And I think that's cool, but I don't know, it's sometimes a hard thing to navigate, because it's kind of like, okay, but what do you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite a heavy album, isn't it? Really,
it was very dark, wasn't it?
You know, you're saying grunge, Pearl Jam's 10 is grunge, and then you're saying Badmotorfinger is grunge.
It's all over.
It's not even the same. It's not the same style of music, is it? Really?
At the end of the day, they all just came from Seattle, didn't they?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I mean, I think Badmotorfinger is closer to what I consider to be grunge, which is because I always feel like it's all like punk music, but through the lens of like 70s metal or something. Like it's like a weird, it's got those, the punk aesthetic, but at the same time, they're not shying away from being heavy or having riffs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's Badmotorfinger, but Badmotorfinger also, well, and Soundgarden in general, had odd time signatures and odd tunings and all this weird shit. And it's so weird that using the term grunge, because I'm just like, all these bands are so unique.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like I would rather just call them the Seattle bands than calling them the grunge bands, because it's like they all just had they're from the same sort of area, but they all had their own unique thing going on.
Exactly that. Like, I mean, how could you lump like Alice in Chains or whatever like in and just say, oh yeah, that's grunge, I mean, they were a metal band.
Yeah. It's a weird thing, isn't it? Where like they all have that similar aesthetic, but none of them sonically are actually very much alike.
No.
They just
it's like the only connection is that somebody in the band wore a flannel at some point.
That kind of is it. And you know what? Didn't like towards the end of grunge, when it stopped dying off, the word grunge, wasn't it Walmart or something started putting adverts in papers for like grunge outfits?
They
did anyone see that? Someone put it on Twitter the other day. They created a grunge fashion, and once you could buy like the flannel shirt and the kind of jumper with a couple of holes in it and the crappy jeans. You could go and buy that outfit at Walmart, and so you were a grunger. I think that's when it died, and then they just become the good bands stayed going and just become hard rock bands, metal bands, and the grunge thing died off. But like I said, it was such a short-lived thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think that's in a lot of ways that's what made it kind of special. I think that whole scene.
Yeah, and another thing was is it Jesus Christ Pose? The video was banned by MTV. And it's never been shown in its full entirety since. So that would have hindered with those guys 100%, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then obviously they come back with Black Hole Sun, and that became massive on MTV. But in the early days when it really broke, their video was fucking banned.
Yeah.
Well, they had the video for Outshined that did really well over here.
Right.
But
I don't remember that video.
That's the one where it's like they're in like a weird room. It's like the floor covered in sand, and Chris Cornell has his shirt off, and he's just like singing. He doesn't have a guitar. Right. He's just singing, and there's a guy walking on walking on like a mouse wheel, but it's like a human walking on it. It's a great video.
I can remember it now. I can remember it now.
Like you're going to look for that dolphin. I'm going to look for that.
But what a voice, right?
Cool. Oh, hell yeah. But Soundgarden was one that it took me a little bit to get into, just because there was so much to unwrap in their music for me.
Yeah.
But eventually this became one of my favorite albums of all time. But it took several months to a year for it to really sink in. I was like, oh, this is like really fucking great stuff. But I had friends that even back then, they were like, no, fuck that album. Louder Than Love's the last good album they made. And I'm like, why? Like, because they're both great. But even back then, there were those fans that were like, kind of didn't like the fact that they came across kind of like a metal band now.
Yeah.
And I had no problem with it, obviously, but
all the people who were like, I only liked them and listened to them before they like got signed, before they recorded anything. And
those
always
people.
Those people, weren't there?
Yeah. People.
You know that there's somebody out there that only collects the demo. He only has the demos of every band. That's it. After their demo, they were shit.
Yeah. It's mental, isn't it? There's some people's mentality. I bought Badmotorfinger, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't get into it straight away, probably similar to what you were saying. But then I got Super Unknown when that came out, and that made me go back and revisit Badmotorfinger, and that's when it really hit me.
Yeah,
which is probably kind of a weird way of doing it, but
it's like you said earlier, you can't really remember the track names, can you, from Badmotorfinger?
Not so much, no.
Just
Rusty Cage.
My mate had the Rusty Cage picture disc, and that's how I got into them. Yeah, I don't know what tracks were on it as well, but that
Slaves and
that's where I
Bulldozers
first
is one
heard
of the
it.
heaviest songs of all time, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. I love that shit.
Drawing Flies, that really fast one, isn't it?
And then there's songs like Holy Water. That's one of my favorites of theirs.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of a slower track, and Mind Riot is amazing.
It's
I
a
love
really good album.
Room 1,000 Years Wide. That one's
Oh
awesome.
shit, yeah.
That one coming earlier because we had the where we were setting up, we had it on the shuffle, and it's like there. No, it's fantastic. I mean, anyone who hasn't heard any of these albums, it would be strange if you haven't. But if you haven't, I mean, hopefully this really kind of entices you into listening to them. I'm sure it will. Someone somewhere is going to go, oh, I well want to hear Room 1,000 Years Wide, and I well want to see that dolphin.
The dolphin. Stop talking about the dolphin.
No, I won't mention him again. Right, I know we're on a time, and we're gonna have to move on to Nirvana's Nevermind. Yeah. Also released on 24th September 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Kurt Cobain. There's not many people who don't know that name.
No.
And what happened to Kurt?
It's probably less these days
Who?
than.
And what happened to Kurt in the end after his 3, well, if you include Incesticide, 4 amazing albums that they released.
Yep.
Which that's the and you can say you love. Well, I can say I love every single track of every single album.
Yeah, see, I wanted to know straight away because I haven't listened to the podcast. I want to know, what did you put as their best album, you guys?
I put Nevermind.
I probably did too, because this was over 2 years ago, so I don't remember.
Right.
My favorite album is In Utero.
Same as me.
But I think I was probably looking at it as Nevermind. It, to me, has no bad songs, and the influence of that album and what it accomplished in music. There's no way to put any other album at number 1, even though it's not the one that I always go to listen to.
Yeah.
That's probably because I've heard it so many damn times. I mean, it's literally an album that completely changed my life.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Just because I had never thought about maybe being a musician before I heard and saw Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this seems way more tangible than fucking Kirk Hammett up there doing his solos on the big stage in front of thousands of people. Because I was like, I would love to be that guy, but I feel like I know Kurt, and I feel like I could do that. And so it just led me on that path of being a musician from that point on.
Yeah. I just love the whole stage diving thing in the videos and the way they just dressed like normal.
It was already at that point, I was like, this is the best album I've ever heard. And still one of the best albums I've ever heard.
Yeah. I remember one of my mates at school, he had a tape of it, and he'd this is brilliant, but because he didn't want his parents to read like the track listing, because you had Territorial Pissings on there, right?
Yeah.
On the front, he'd written all the track names out for me, and he'd written Territorial Peeins and put a little asterisk next to it, and then you lifted up the flap and it said Pissings on the inside.
Do you know what's funny about that with the cassette? Because I had the cassette first too, and I played the fuck out of it, and then when I got my first CD player a few months later, I bought a CD version of it.
Yeah.
And then the one of the coolest things that's ever happened in my life in an album experience was I'm alone in my room. I'm playing Nevermind on CD. I've heard it so many times now, and I fall asleep, and the album ends, and all of a sudden I'm awoken by and I'm like, because it wasn't on the cassette, so I had no fucking clue. And I wake up and I'm like, what is going on? Because prior to that, no such thing as I'd never heard of an extra
song.
track.
That was so cool back then, wasn't it?
I was so just like, this is fucking crazy. And of course, I immediately call my friends like, anyone else have the CD version of Nevermind? There's like a whole other song that's complete chaos. Come on.
Yeah. And the other thing with that tape, the particular tape that this kid done for me, was that I played it literally to death, like within a week, and then had to go and buy it myself. But the way he'd recorded it was, I don't know whether it was on like a C60 or a C90 or whatever the tapes were at the time, but it would get to halfway through what song was it? I can't remember what song it was, but it would cut off halfway through and have to turn the tape over. And for years, listening to this, because I'd listened to that tape so much, listening to the CD for years later, I'd hear it in my head. I'd be like, it's about to stop.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I knew it wasn't going to stop, but in my head, I was like, it's going to stop. It was very, very strange.
I have that with some albums I had on cassette where I would accidentally hit record and it would record over a tiny bit of it. And there's always a little dip in the song. So now whenever I hear the song, I always imagine there being a dip in the song.
Yeah.
So it debuted. No, it didn't debut. It got to number 1 in January 92, Nevermind, in America. And it reached number 6 in the UK. That obviously, because the momentum and the popularity of it obviously built up from its release and then got to the point of January 92. Got to number 1, exploded, then they like headline Reading in 92 over here, didn't they?
It knocked Michael Jackson off the top of the charts, right?
They did, yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Lithium, the song Lithium, which we all loved, was about his friend he used to live with who was a born again Christian. It's kind of about religion, and if you need it or you don't need it, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know, you should embrace it. And that's what it was about. Didn't know that at the time. Couldn't figure that out when I was 16. Anything else about Nevermind you can remember? Eddie, when you first heard it, what are your feelings on it? What's its longevity?
It's funny, actually. The first time I heard any Nirvana, it was actually the Smells Like Nirvana Weird Al Yankovic parody of Smells Like Teen Spirit. So I actually heard that first, but I thought it was cool. I mean, so I went and checked it out eventually. Noises. Yeah, man. And the bendy guitar.
I had the CD single, and he's in the water and he's chasing a donut.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I remember loving Smells Like Teen Spirit, but the song that really sold me on it was Come As You Are, because like hearing that cool chorus guitar effect, I was all over that, with the gun floating in the water. I just thought that was one of the coolest things. Like the way the imagery looks, how the guitar sounds, and it's like it just sounds wet, and it just have that association with the water. I just always see it every time that riff starts. It's just a really cool memory. I just thought, wow, that's a cool noise.
Oh, completely.
I remember reading that he was so strung out on drugs when he was swinging on that chandelier that's why they blurred the video and made it look kind of like water effect, because he looked fucking terrible and he's swinging up and down on that chandelier for that video.
I can believe it.
Makes sense.
I read that, yeah.
Like I can remember.
Yeah, I was at school, and somebody came and told me that he had died, and at that point, I just kind of figured it was inevitable because it seemed like he was a mess, and I'm just like, so I was sad about it, but at the same time, like I kind of saw it coming because he just seemed like a dude with a lot of problems.
I had the exact same experience, but it was in college with a friend of mine coming up to me and saying Chris Cornell had died. But I didn't expect that at all.
That came out of nowhere, didn't it?
Yeah. And that's the one time like I've actually gotten legitimately upset over like a famous person's death. So it's just like, fucking hell, man. Like that was my favorite vocalist. Like he is. And when my friend said, have you heard the news? I went, no, what? That Chris Cornell's gone. Well, what do you mean he's gone? He's dead. And I thought, oh fuck. Like what a shocking, like it was just so out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those those grunge icons just fell one by one, didn't they? You just kind of expected Weiland to go, you expected Lane Staley to go, and you got the news and you were kind of like, you'd already got over it because you already knew it was going to happen. If you know what I mean, you didn't want it to happen in any way, but you kind of figured eventually it's going to happen. I know you've got
I kind of got more sad about it later on in life, actually, which is the weird thing. But yeah, right.
When you got a chance, I haven't really processed any of those other guys, to be honest. I've just kind of like, oh fucking hell, no way, I've never really dealt with it. But I know you've got to go ahead, and so what we always ask when we have guests on is if you have one song to send into space. For anyone in other universes, civilizations, anyone out there, aliens or whatever, to hear. It's only going to be one song. We normally say you can have any song from any back catalogue in history of music, but your one song each is going to have to be something from the 44 days.
That's easy.
Oh,
Yeah, so go for it.
They're both going to say Metallica. Oh no!
It smells like Teen Spirit. That song, because that song is culturally significant, and I would want other people in another part of the world to know, or whatever, or universe or whatever, to hear this and just be like, know that this is something important from whatever they call our planet.
Just a man in a flannel shirt ripping off the Pixies.
Somebody shoot him.
which you could point out the Pixies ripped off people as well. But I mean, if you really want, then we might as well send Chuck Berry to space, because nobody else,
100%. No, I'm just playing. I mean, I'd probably pick the same song, I'm sure. What about you?
You said something of GNR in the car.
I did say Estranged.
You did. He's having Teen Spirit. You're having Estranged.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to stick with it. That was
Eddie.
my first choice.
I'm gonna pick Black. I think Black is such a fantastically written song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's speaking of cultural significance, I get it, but it's just such a well-crafted song. So I'm picking it on its merits.
Yeah, it's got to be my favorite on the album, I think.
Yeah. I said I was going to choose Oceans because I didn't want them to think that we're a bunch of nutcases and we want to attack them. And it's such a beautiful song. But if I could only listen to one song out of the whole 44 days ever again, I might have to say You Could Be Mine.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And that it's hard to leave out Nirvana, any Nirvana track, but I don't know, it's just something there that set it off. The whole 44 days in 91 to me was set off from You Could Be Mine and the video. So it's the heartfelt one that stands there.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
Fair play.
Love it. Right, we'll let you go, and
totally.
You've got things to do, guys. We really appreciate you coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant. And I knew you guys were the ones to talk about the 44 days in 91. You've proven to be completely worthy.
Yeah. If you guys want to do it again, you guys think up a topic and we'll come and chat about it.
We're up for it.
We'll do. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on. You've been great.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Yeah, and you guys.